Autumn had always believed that love within a family was something solid, something that didn't need constant proof or praise. Growing up, she was the quieter sister, the one who listened more than she spoke, who noticed the cracks before they widened. Serena, on the other hand, had always been fire, loud, ambitious, and hungry for attention. She dreamed big and spoke often about the life she deserved. Autumn admired that confidence, even when it overshadowed her own quieter talents. As years passed, Autumn discovered her gift for design. She learned how colors could speak, how fabric could tell stories, how a space could be transformed into something alive. She never chased applause for it. Creating was enough. When Serena began talking about opening her own boutique, Autumn didn't hesitate. The dream sounded fragile, like glass, and Autumn felt an instinctive need to protect it. She listened to Serena's plans late into the night, nodding as excitement poured out in rushed sentences. There was talk of elegance, of exclusivity, of becoming a name people whispered with admiration. Autumn saw the gaps immediately: the lack of planning, the unrealistic numbers, the impulsive choices, but she said nothing. Instead, she offered what she knew best. She sketched layouts, designed logos, sourced suppliers, and quietly invested her savings. Money she had set aside for her own future flowed into Serena's dream without contracts or conditions. Family didn't need paperwork. Autumn believed. The early days were exhausting but hopeful. Autumn worked behind the scenes while Serena took center stage, charming investors and posting glossy previews on social media. Whenever someone praised the boutique's look, Serena smiled and accepted the compliments as if they had always belonged to her. Autumn stood nearby, content to remain invisible. She told herself that recognition didn't matter. That success for Serena was success for both of them. She ignored the small moments that should have warned her. The way Serena stopped asking for her opinion, the way her tone shifted from gratitude to expectation. Help became obligation, and sacrifice became something Serena assumed would never end. As the boutique began to gain attention, the dynamic between them changed subtly. Then sharply, Serena's confidence hardened into arrogance. Conversations became one-sided, filled with complaints about stress and entitlement to more. Autumn found herself working longer hours, fixing problems she didn't create, smoothing over mistakes Serena refused to acknowledge. Still, she stayed. Loyalty to Autumn meant endurance. She believed that once the pressure eased, her sister would remember who had stood beside her from the beginning. But memory is fragile when success rewrites history. Serena started speaking of the boutique as her sole achievement, a testament to her ambition and taste. Autumn became an accessory, mentioned only when convenient, dismissed when inconvenient. The warmth between them cooled into something formal and distant. Though Autumn couldn't pinpoint the exact moment it happened, she only knew that she felt increasingly like a stranger in a space she had helped build from nothing. Despite everything, Autumn continued to give. She redesigned seasonal displays, negotiated with suppliers, and quietly covered shortfalls when cash flow tightened. Each sacrifice chipped away at her sense of self, but she convinced herself it was temporary. Family was worth discomfort. She told herself family was worth patience. What she didn't realize was that patience, unreciprocated, slowly turns into invisibility. The boutique stood as a symbol of Serena's rise, but beneath the polished surfaces was Autumn's labor, her creativity, her savings, her silence. She had built not just a business, but a pedestal for her sister to stand on. And as Serena climbed higher, she looked down less and less, until Autumn existed only as a shadow, useful, quiet, and easily discarded. The dream Autumn had helped nurture was no longer shared. It had become something else entirely, something that demanded her sacrifice without acknowledging her presence. And still, she stayed, unaware that this foundation built on love and silence was already beginning to crack. Success arrived for Serena the way a sudden spotlight changes a stage, harsh and blinding, illuminating only what it chose to see. The boutique that once felt fragile and uncertain became a place people talked about with admiration. Customers lined up, influencers tagged the location, and compliments poured in from every direction. Serena absorbed it all hungrily. Where she had once spoken of our dream, her language shifted to my vision. The change wasn't T announced. It crept in quietly, wrapped in confidence and applause, until Autumn barely recognized the sister she had grown up with. At first, the shift felt harmless. Serena began dressing better, speaking sharper, moving with an air of importance that suggested she was always late for something more valuable. Autumn told herself this was natural. Success changes people, she reasoned, and pressure brings out strange sides of even the best intentions. But beneath that polished surface, something colder was forming. Gratitude faded from Serena's voice, replaced by expectation. Help was no longer appreciated. It was assumed. When Autumn offered ideas, Serena brushed them aside with a distracted nod, as if indulging a child. The boutique's growth didn't soften Serena's edges. It sharpened them. She began measuring her worth by numbers, by attention, by how loudly people admired her. In that equation, Autumn had no visible value. The hours Autumn spent fixing mistakes, covering costs, and calming suppliers happened in silence. And silence doesn't impress an audience. Serena stopped acknowledging those efforts entirely. When problems arose, she blamed Autumn without hesitation. When things went well, she claimed sole credit. The imbalance grew heavier with every passing week. Autumn noticed how conversations changed. They were no longer about shared memories or future hopes, but about status, image, and control. Serena spoke about people as tools, about loyalty as something owed to her success. She laughed at others' struggles, forgetting that not long ago, she had been the one asking for help. Autumn listened, unsettled by how easily compassion had been replaced by pride. The sister she once defended was slowly becoming someone she didn't recognize, someone who saw kindness as weakness and humility as an inconvenience. Publicly, Serena shone. Privately, she grew impatient and cruel. Small disagreements turned into sharp remarks. Requests became commands. Autumn felt the shift in the air, an unspoken hierarchy forming between them. She was no longer a partner or even a supporter. She was an employee without a title, a resource to be used and corrected. When Autumn tried to remind Serena of their shared beginnings, Serena dismissed it as sentimentality, something irrelevant in a world driven by winners and losers. The most painful part wasn't the arrogance itself, but how naturally it came to Serena. There was no guilt in her behavior, no pause to reflect on the hands that had lifted her when she couldn't stand alone. She spoke as if she had always been destined for this success, as if Autumn's sacrifices were minor details, barely worth mentioning. Each careless word carved a deeper distance between them. Autumn felt herself shrinking in Serena's presence, careful with her tone, cautious with her opinions, afraid that honesty would be met with ridicule. What once felt like a shared victory now felt like exclusion. Serena surrounded herself with people who praised her, who reinforced the version of herself she preferred to believe in. Autumn was an uncomfortable reminder of a time when Serena needed help, and Serena wanted no reminders of weakness. Gratitude had no place in her new identity. It was replaced by entitlement, by the belief that everything she touched was hers by right. Autumn watched all of this with a quiet ache. She didn't argue or demand acknowledgement. She simply observed as success transformed love into rivalry and support, into something Serena believed she deserved. The boutique thrived, but the bond between sisters withered. In the glow of achievement, Serena lost sight of the difference between ambition and arrogance, between confidence and contempt. And as gratitude disappeared, so did the respect that once held their relationship together, leaving behind a hollow triumph built on forgotten sacrifices. The birthday party was meant to be a celebration, a carefully curated evening that reflected Serena's success and taste. The boutique had been transformed into an elegant venue, filled with soft lighting, music, and guests who admired everything Serena touched. Autumn arrived quietly, as she always did, carrying a neatly wrapped gift she had spent weeks preparing. It wasn't too expensive in the way Serena now measured value. But it was thoughtful, designed with care and attention, something Autumn believed still mattered between sisters. She smiled as she stepped inside, hoping, despite everything, that this night might soften the distance that had grown between them. Serena moved through the crowd like a queen, accepting compliments with practiced ease. When she noticed Autumn, her expression barely changed. There was no warmth, no familiarity, just a brief acknowledgement before she returned to her admirers. Autumn waited patiently, telling herself it was a busy night. She watched as Serena laughed loudly, clinked glasses, and soaked in the attention. When the moment finally came to present the gift, Autumn approached with a quiet confidence, extending it with both hands. For a brief second, she imagined gratitude flickering across Serena's face, a reminder of who they once were. Instead, Serena's smile tightened. She unwrapped the gift slowly, deliberately, as if already disappointed. The room felt smaller as guests leaned in, curious. When the final layer came off, Serena held the gift up with a puzzled expression. Her eyes scanned it, not with appreciation, but with judgment. Then she laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh or a misunderstanding. It was sharp and dismissive, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. She made a comment about how cheap it looked, how outdated it was, how it didn't fit her image anymore. Autumn felt the words land like a physical blow. Heat rushed to her face as conversations around them quieted. Serena didn't stop there. She exaggerated her disappointment, waving the gift dismissively before walking toward a nearby trash bin. Without hesitation, she dropped it inside, the sound of it hitting the bottom echoing far louder than it should have. She turned back to the crowd with a shrug and said it was worthless trash, something she didn't need cluttering her life. The room froze. Some guests laughed awkwardly, unsure how to react. Others looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge Serena. Autumn stood still, her hands empty, her heart pounding. The humiliation was complete, not just because of what Serena had done, but because of where and how she had done it. This wasn't a private insult or a careless remark. It was a performance, a declaration of superiority meant to put Autumn in her place. Autumn didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice or defend herself. Instead, she felt something inside her shift, something quiet but irreversible. The embarrassment burned, but beneath it was clarity. In that moment, she understood that the bond she had been protecting no longer existed. Serena had chosen an audience over family, cruelty over gratitude. The sister Autumn loved was gone, replaced by someone who saw humiliation as entertainment. Serena returned to her guests, laughing as if nothing had happened. Music resumed, conversations picked up, and the party continued. Autumn watched from the edge of the room, feeling strangely detached. The pain was still there, but it no longer demanded a reaction. What demanded attention was the truth she could no longer ignore. Respect had been shattered publicly, beyond repair. Silence, in that moment, was not weakness. It was self-preservation. Autumn left without saying goodbye. No one stopped her. Outside, the night air felt colder, sharper, but also clarifying. She walked away carrying nothing but the weight of what she had finally seen. The public humiliation was not just an insult. It was a breaking point. It stripped away excuses and illusions, leaving only reality. Serena had drawn a line in front of everyone, and Autumn, standing on the other side of it, realized that the most painful endings are often the ones that happen in plain sight, witnessed by those who choose to look away. In the days following the party, Autumn did not confront Serena. There were no angry messages, no emotional phone calls, no dramatic demands for an apology. From the outside, it might have looked like acceptance, or even weakness. In truth, something far more deliberate was taking shape. The humiliation had stripped away her illusions, leaving behind a calm, focused resolve. Autumn understood now that reacting with anger would only give Serena what she thrived on: attention, control, and the satisfaction of having provoked a response. Silence, chosen carefully, became her strength. Autumn began to separate herself quietly from the life she had helped build for her sister. She reviewed the records she had kept, the investments she had made, the designs she had created. Each detail was a reminder of how deeply she had been involved, how much of herself she had given without recognition. Instead of confronting Serena with these truths, Autumn took action. She withdrew her financial support in a way that was clean and undeniable. Payments stopped, backing disappeared. The safety net Serena had never acknowledged was suddenly gone. The change was not announced. Autumn did not explain herself or justify her decisions. She simply reclaimed what was hers. Designs she had created were removed from active use. Supplier relationships she had managed were redirected. It was not sabotage. It was separation. Everything Autumn took back had always belonged to her, though Serena had grown comfortable pretending otherwise. The boutique continued to operate, but cracks began to show beneath its polished surface. Costs rose. Mistakes multiplied. Problems that Autumn had once quietly fixed now demanded attention. Serena noticed the absence quickly. Calls came first, then messages, growing sharper with each unanswered attempt. Confusion turned into frustration, and frustration into outrage. Autumn remained unreachable, not out of spite, but out of clarity. She had said everything she needed to say with her actions. By stepping back, she forced Serena to confront a reality she had long avoided: that success built on borrowed strength collapses when that strength is removed. For the first time, Autumn felt grounded. There was no satisfaction in watching Serena struggle, no sense of triumph. What she felt instead was relief. She slept better. Her thoughts were no longer consumed by fixing someone else's problems. The space she created by walking away filled with something unfamiliar but welcome: peace. She redirected her energy toward her own work, projects she had delayed for years while prioritizing Serena's dream. Creativity returned without pressure, flowing freely now that it wasn't being drained. Serena's public image began to fray. Customers noticed inconsistencies. Staff turnover increased. The effortless elegance she once projected required constant effort to maintain, without Autumn smoothing the edges. The boutique's flaws became visible. Serena responded the only way she knew how: by blaming others, by lashing out, by doubling down on control. But control without support only accelerates collapse. Autumn watched none of this directly. She did not check social media or ask mutual acquaintances for updates. Her focus had shifted inward. The absence of drama was not empty. It was healing. She understood now that dignity does not need an audience. It doesn't announce itself or demand validation. It exists quietly, in decisions made without resentment, in boundaries held without explanation. Choosing restraint over revenge was not an act of forgiveness. Autumn did not excuse Serena's cruelty or rewrite what had happened. She simply refused to let it define her future. By stepping away, she reclaimed ownership of her time, her talent, and her self-respect. The revenge Serena might have expected public confrontation, emotional outbursts. Retaliation never came. What arrived instead was something far more unsettling: indifference. In that indifference lay Autumn's power. Serena no longer occupied her thoughts or dictated her choices. The dynamic that had once drained Autumn of her energy was broken, not by force, but by withdrawal. Walking away was not surrender. It was self-alignment. In choosing dignity over revenge, Autumn discovered that the quietest actions often carry the greatest weight, and that sometimes the most decisive statement is made without saying a single word. A year passed without ceremony or closure. Time did what arguments never could, settling the dust and revealing what remained when emotion no longer clouded perspective. Autumn's life no longer revolved around anticipation or disappointment. The silence she had chosen became a steady companion, not empty or lonely, but grounding. Mornings began without anxiety, without the instinct to check messages or prepare for conflict. The absence of Serena was no longer a wound. It was simply space. And within that space, Autumn found herself again. Her work flourished in ways it never had before, freed from obligation, Autumn poured her creativity into projects that reflected her own vision rather than someone else's ambition. Clients valued her eye, her discipline, her ability to listen. Recognition came naturally, without force, and it felt different this time. It didn't demand sacrifice or compromise. It affirmed what Autumn had always known, but never prioritized, that her worth did not depend on proximity to anyone else's success. Each completed project reinforced a quiet confidence, built not on validation, but on alignment. There were moments when memories surfaced uninvited. A shared childhood joke, a holiday tradition, the echo of a bond that once felt unbreakable. Autumn did not push these memories away, nor did she dwell in them. She let them exist without meaning more than they were. Nostalgia no longer carried pain. It was softened by acceptance. She understood now that loving someone does not require enduring their harm, and letting go does not erase what once mattered. News of Serena reached her occasionally, filtered through distant acquaintances. The boutique struggled, closed briefly, reopened with less fanfare. The confident Serena once projected appeared strained, her image carefully managed but increasingly hollow. Autumn felt no satisfaction in this knowledge. Karma, she realized, did not announce itself or seek approval. It simply unfolded, quietly and impartially, shaped by choices made long before consequences appeared. Autumn's peace was not the result of forgiveness. She never reached a moment of absolution or reconciliation. What she achieved was freedom from expectation, from guilt, from the need to be understood by someone who had chosen not to see her. She no longer rehearsed conversations in her head or imagined alternate outcomes. The story had ended, and she had stepped out of it without carrying the weight of its unfinished sentences. Strength revealed itself differently than she had once believed. It was not dramatic or confrontational. It did not seek justice through exposure or revenge. Real strength was waking up content, building a life untouched by bitterness, and knowing that walking away had been an act of self-respect rather than defeat. Autumn learned that serenity is not passive. It is earned through difficult decisions and upheld through consistency. Her world grew quieter but richer. Relationships formed without manipulation or imbalance. Trust was no longer something she gave freely without discernment. It was mutual, earned, and protected. The lessons from her past did not harden her, but they refined her. She became more attentive to her own boundaries, more selective with her energy, and more confident in saying no without explanation. When Autumn looked back on the night, her gift was thrown away. The memory no longer burned. It stood as a marker, a moment that divided her life into before and after. What followed was not regret, but clarity. That single act of humiliation had stripped away illusions and forced her to choose herself. In doing so, she had gained something Serena could never take, peace rooted in self-worth. Autumn did not win by watching her sister fall. She won by rising quietly, without witnesses, into a life that felt honest and whole. Freedom, she learned, does not come from being understood or validated by those who hurt us. It comes from releasing the need for either and choosing a path that no longer requires their approval. In that choice, Autumn found the calm power of moving forward, untouched by bitterness, grounded in dignity, and finally truly free.